Hare Krishna, and we're continuing with Shri Īśopaniṣad by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, page number 58, mantra 11. Vidyam cha yas tadvedo bhayam saha avidyayam rityum tirtva vidyayam ritam ashnute. Vidyam, knowledge in fact, cha, and, avidyam, nescience, cha, and, ya, a person, tad, that, veda, knows, ubhayam, both, saha, simultaneously, avidyaya, by culture of nescience, mrityum, repeated death, tirtva, transcending, Vidyaya, by culture of knowledge. Amritam, deathlessness. Ashnute, enjoys. Translation. Only one who can learn the process of nescience and that of transcendental knowledge side by side can transcend the influence of repeated birth and death and enjoy the full blessing of immortality. Purport. Since the start of the material world, everyone is trying for a permanent life. But the law of nature is so cruel that no one has avoided the hand of death. No one wants to die. That is a practical fact. Nor does anyone want to become old or diseased. But the law of nature does not allow anyone immunity from death, old age, or disease. The advancement of material knowledge has not solved these problems of life. Material science can discover the nuclear bomb to accelerate the process of death, but it cannot discover anything which can protect man from the cruel hands of death, disease, and old age. From the Puranas, we learn of the activities of Hiranyakashipu. This king was materially very much advanced, and by his material acquisitions, by the strength of his nescience, he wanted to conquer death. He underwent a type of meditation so severe that all the planetary systems became disturbed by his mystic powers. He forced the creator of the universe, the demigod, named Brahma, to come down to him, and then he asked him for the benediction of becoming an Amara, one who does not die. Brahma refused to award this because even he, the material creator, who has command over all the planets, is not himself an Amara. He has a long duration of life, as is confirmed in the Bhagavad Gita, but that does not mean that he doesn't have to die. Hiranya means gold, and Kashipu means soft bed. This gentleman was interested in these two things, money and women, and he wanted to enjoy the sort of life by becoming artificially immortal. He asked Brahma many things, indirectly in hopes of fulfilling his desire to become an Amara. He asked benediction that he might not be killed by any man, animal, god, or any living being within the categories of the 8,400,000 species. He also asked that he might not die on the land, in the air, in the water, or by any weapon whatsoever. So on and on, Hiranyakashipu thought foolishly that this would guarantee him against death. But in the end, although Brahma granted him all these benedictions, he was killed by the personality of Godhead in the form of half man and half lion. And no weapon was used to kill him except the nails of the Lord. he was killed on the lap of the wonderful living being who was beyond his conception. The whole point here is that even Hiranyakashipu, the most powerful of the materialists, could not become deathless by his various plans. What then will be accomplished by the tiny Hiranyakashipus of today, who make plans which are throttled from moment to moment? Sri Īśopaniṣad instructs us not to become one-sided, not to make one-sided attempts to win the struggle for existence. Everyone is struggling hard for existence, but the law of material nature is so hard and fast that it does not allow any to surpass it. In order to have permanent life, one must be prepared to go back to Godhead. This process of going back to Godhead is a different branch of knowledge, and it has to be learned from the revealed Vedic scriptures, such as the Upanishads, Vedanta, Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, etc. Therefore, to become happy in this life and to get a permanent blissful life after leaving this material body, one must take to this sacred literature and obtain transcendental knowledge. The conditioned living being has forgotten his eternal relation with God, and he has mistakenly accepted the temporary place of birth as all in all. The Lord has kindly delivered the above-mentioned scriptures in India and other scriptures in other countries to remind the forgetful human being that his home is not here in the material world. The living being is a spiritual entity, and he can only be happy by returning to his spiritual home with the Godhead. The personality of Godhead from his kingdom sends his bona fide representatives, servants, to propagate this mission of going back to Godhead. And sometimes he comes himself to do this work. All living beings are his beloved sons, his parts and parcels, and therefore God is more sorry than we ourselves are for the sufferings which we're constantly undergoing in the material condition. The miseries of the material world are also indirect reminders of our incompatibility with dead matter, and intelligent living entities generally take note of these reminders and side by side engage themselves in the culture of Vidya, or transcendental knowledge. Human life is the best opportunity for the culture of spiritual knowledge. And the human being who does not take advantage of this opportunity in human life is called a Naradama, the lowest of human beings. Wow. The path of avidya, or material advancement of knowledge for sense gratification, means repetition of death and repetition of birth also. The living entity, as he is spiritually, has no birth or death. Birth and death are concerned with the outward covering of the spirit soul, the body. This is compared with the putting on and taking off of outward garments. Foolish human beings who are grossly absorbed in the culture of avidya, nations, do not mind this cruel process, but being enamored by the beauty of the illusory energy, they do the same things over repeatedly without learning any lesson from the law of nature. The culture of Vidya, or transcendental knowledge, is essential for the human being. Unrestricted sense enjoyment in the diseased material condition of the senses must be restricted as far as possible. Unrestricted sense enjoyment in this bodily condition is the path of ignorance and death. We can all agree with that, right? Unrestricted, like overdoing something. The living entities are not without spiritual senses. Every living being in his original spiritual form has all the senses, which are now material, covered by the body and the mind. Activities of the material senses are perverted reflections of spiritual pastimes. The engagement of the spirit soul under the material covering is the diseased condition of the soul. And the real sense enjoyment is possible when the disease is removed. In our pure spiritual form, freed from all material contamination, pure enjoyment of the senses is possible. The aim of life should, therefore, not be perverted sense enjoyment, but should be to cure the material disease. Aggravating the material disease is no sign of knowledge. It is the sign of culturing avidya, ignorance. The degree of a fever must not be increased from 105 to 107 for good health. The degree is to be reduced to the normal state of 98.6. That should be the aim of human life. The modern trend of material civilization is to increase the degree of the feverish material condition, which has therefore reached the point of 107 in the form of atomic energy, with the foolish politicians crying that at any moment the world may go to hell. That is the result of the advancement of material knowledge and of the neglect of the most important part of life, the culture of spiritual knowledge. Here is a warning in Sri Īśopaniṣad that we must not follow such a dangerous path leading to death. On the contrary, we must, side by side, develop the culture of spiritual knowledge, so that we may become completely free from the cruel hands of death. This does not mean that all civic activities for the maintenance of the body should be stopped. There is no question of stopping activities, as there is no question of wiping out one's temperature altogether when trying to recover from a disease. Oh, this is beautiful. This is so true. Many times people think that to become a devotee, to become a spiritual person, you have to not do anything. Okay, we have already tried to explain the matter by the expression to make the best use of a bad bargain. The culture of spiritual knowledge has to be done with the help of this body and mind, and therefore maintenance of the body and mind is required if we are to reach our goal. Haribol! The normal temperature should be maintained at 98.6 degrees, but it should not be foolishly increased to the degree of 107. The great sages and saints of India wanted to maintain the normal temperature by a balanced program of material and spiritual knowledge. They never allowed the misuse of human intelligence for diseased sense gratification. Human activities diseased by a temperament of sense gratification have been regulated in the Vedas under the principles of salvation. The system is found in 4 divisions: religion, economic development, sense gratification, and salvation. At the present moment, the people have no interest either in religion or salvation. They have only one aim in life: sense gratification, and in order to fulfill this, they have different plans for economic development. Misguided man thinks that religion should be maintained for its contribution to economic development, and that economic development is required for sense gratification. And in order to guarantee further sense gratification after death in heaven, there is some system of religious observances. But this is not the purpose of the principles of salvation. The path of religion is actually for self-realization. Economic development is required just to maintain the body in a sound, healthy condition. A man should live in a healthy condition of life with a sound mind, just to realize vidya, true knowledge, which is the aim of human life. This life is not meant for working like an ass, or for the culture of avidya, or for sense gratification. The path of vidya is most perfectly presented in the Srimad Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam directs a human being to utilize his life in the matter of inquiring about the absolute truth. The absolute truth is realized step by step as Brahman, Paramatma, and at last Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead. This absolute truth is realized by the broad-minded man who has attained knowledge and detachment, having followed the 18 principles of the Bhagavad Gita described above in the previous episode, right? The central point in these 18 principles is the attainment of transcendental, devotional service to the personality of Godhead. Therefore, it is recommended for all classes of men to learn the art of devotional service to the Lord. Religiousness, economic development, and sense gratification, without the aim of attaining devotional service to the Lord, are all different forms of nescience, as will be shown hereafter in Sri Īśopaniṣad. Thus, to culture vidya, especially in this age, one must always hear and chant and worship with concentrated attention, targeted on the personality of Godhead, who is the Lord of the Transcendentalists. Haribol! I really love this purport because it has to do exactly to the present, like it's very convenient at the present moment, right? With all this health issues going on in the world in 2020. We're concluding 2020 in 5 days, and we should really think and reflect on why do we really need a healthy condition of life. Do we need it to increase our temperature of unrestricted sense enjoyment and then repeated birth and death, or do we need a healthy condition of life with a sound mind to realize true knowledge and to follow the path of self-realization? Something to think about. Thank you so much for tuning in today. The link to this book is in the description as always, and yes, we shall continue tomorrow with mantra 12. So stay tuned. Haribol.